Debbie Georgatos, host of America Can We Talk, is an author, attorney, and political analyst whose mission is to inspire the American political conversation about preserving liberty in the best country on earth.
And hello again, and welcome back to America Can We Talk. We had the power go out in our building, so we jumping back in, starting the show up. I did the first 5 already today, which I now see was a little bit longer than 5, but we're turning back to our second topic for today, which is I want to talk about Bernie Sanders versus John Kasich at the Democrat convention last night. I think when you listen to these two clips, what you really see is I kind of label these characters a little bit. I think that Bernie Sanders is just militant. He's just a militant leftist, and that's what he'll always be, and that's what he wants. So he, as many leftists do, he promises free things and great things, but it's always just give me all the money and all the power and all the control over every aspect of your life, and I'll make your life good. That is the argument of Bernie Sanders. Militant is all get out. John Kasich wins the award last night for the most uninformed, confused, befuddled, it's hard to even think of a word, disconnected from reality human being you can possibly imagine. But I sent Matt the wonderful clips. I want to start with Bernie Sanders and tell you what he had to say last night at the Democrat convention.
Good evening. Our great nation is now living in an unprecedented moment. We're facing the worst public health crisis in 100 years and the worst economic collapse since the Great Depression. We are confronting systemic racism and the enormous threat to our planet of climate change. Let me take this opportunity to say a word to the millions of people who supported my campaign this year and in 2016. My friends, thank you for your trust, your support, and the love you showed Jane, me, and our family. Together, we have moved this country in a bold new direction, showing that all of us, black and white, Latino, Native American, Asian American, gay and straight, native-born and immigrant, yearn for a nation based on the principles of justice, love, and compassion. Our campaign ended several months ago, but our movement continues and is getting stronger every day. Many of the ideas we fought for that just a few years ago were considered radical are now mainstream. Together, we must build a nation that is more equitable, more compassionate, and more inclusive. I know that Joe Biden will begin that fight on day one. Let me offer you just a few examples of how Joe will move us forward. Joe supports raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. This will give 40 million workers a pay raise and push the wage scale up for everyone else. Joe will also make it easier for workers to join unions, create 12 weeks of paid family leave, fund universal pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds, and make child care affordable for millions of families.
Okay, that would be Bernie Sanders. Listen to what he's telling you. He is saying, he's acknowledging his campaigns in 2016 and again in 2020, his campaigns are designed to push America, he says, a new direction toward radical Marxism. He acknowledges he's a socialist. He's pushing the American people toward Marxism. And he is not apologizing, and he's not saying, I guess you Americans didn't agree with my ideas. That's why I lost the primary both times. He's not saying that. He's saying, my ideas are Marxist, I'm pushing them on America, and I'm going to get Joe Biden to implement them. He's promising you Biden is going to be as radical as he is. I could spend the rest of the show just cutting down and parsing, running through and obliterating the idiocy of what you just heard from Bernie Sanders, but I want to hit other things. But understand the message from Bernie Sanders. He's a radical Marxist. He always has been. He's actually a communist, unapologetically so, has been for decades. And he's promising you, don't worry, Biden's going to do everything I wanted. Don't worry, you're going to get all this stuff that I was promising you. It's just in a different, coming from Joe Biden instead of me, Bernie Sanders. never explains how somehow the systemic racism, which is now everywhere, according to the radical left in this country, wasn't there. We never talked about it, never heard about it, never heard complaints about it for all the 8 years of Barack Obama. Somehow this has magically just appeared because the Republicans are in control. You have to understand, Bernie Sanders is a radical Marxist. He will take this country in the direction of Cuba and Venezuela. Since he couldn't convince even the Democrat base in this country to do that, he's promising, well, don't worry, Joe Biden will do it for you. The whole push toward unions, I think we've been over this in the show many times. The constitutions of communist countries and socialist countries push unions, celebrate unions, talk about the greatness of unions. They are a tool of radical Marxists. When Democrats push unions, it's because it is an implement that helps them gain and hold on to power. So it's a radically pro-union, free stuff for everybody, free pre-K, free aid for health care, free health care for everybody, of course, minimum wage going up, free stuff for paid family leave. There will just be free stuff, free stuff, free stuff. And as we went through many times when Sanders was running for office, when he says free stuff, he means he and the Democrat Party from Washington are going to force you, the American people, to pay for everybody else's free stuff. That's what they mean. So Sanders is promising a Biden presidency is going to be a radically leftist Bernie Sanders style presidency. Now let's talk about John Kasich, who is, by the way, there was a little video they had, an intro by someone. I'm sure I should know who she was, but whatever. She was doing an intro saying, look at all these people we have. We have Republicans coming to speak on behalf and in favor of Joe Biden. I want to feature just one, John Kasich, who ran for the presidency previously. He's he has an R by his name. He has attempted to say he's actually he's a Republican. But I want you to listen to what he has to say, because if Biden wins the prize for the most, if Bernie Sanders wins the prize for the most militant, John Kasich wins the prize for the most impossibly clueless. Here is John Kasich.
The stakes in this election are greater than any in modern times. Many of us have been deeply concerned about the current path we've been following for the past 4 years. It's a path that's led to division, dysfunction, irresponsibility, and growing vitriol between our citizens. Continuing to follow that path will have terrible consequences for America's soul, because we're being taken down the wrong road by a president who is pitted one against the other. He's unlike all of our best leaders before him, who worked to unite us, to bridge our differences, and lead us to a united America. I've known Joe Biden for 30 years. I know his story of profound grief that has so deeply affected his character. I know Joe is a good man, a man of faith, a unifier, someone who understands the hopes and dreams of the common man and the common woman, a man who can help us to see the humanity in each other. He knows that the path to a restored and rejuvenated America lies in respect and unity and a common purpose for everyone. And I know that Joe Biden, with his experience and his wisdom and his decency, can bring us together to help us find that better way. Joe Biden is a man for our times that call for all of us to take off our partisan hats and put our nation first for ourselves and, of course, for our children. When America chooses the right path and pulls together, like we've done so many times before, we can dream big dreams, and we can see the top of the mountain as a United States of America with a soul that is a beacon of freedom to the entire world.
Okay, apologies to any of you who supported Kasich in any election in his entire life, but that is the most flaming clueless speech that has ever been given imaginable. And let me tell you why. It is disjointed, it is disconnected, it is unaware of the reality in America, given how radically left the American Democrat Party has become. The idiocy of saying, if you just get a nicer person in, we'll all get along, we'll find united purpose, we'll find unity, we'll be the United States of America, we'll come together. This ignores the reality that the radical left in this country is trying to push America over the cliff to socialism, and one of the few leaders in our country actually standing up to say, no, actually, let's stick with the America of the founding, let's stick with freedom, let's stick with the idea of a limited government, let's stick with a sovereign nation, let's stick with a country committed to freedom and individual liberty. That's President Trump. He's practically alone arguing this. And Republicans who serve in the House and Senate, they come home and they make those speeches, and I guess some of them vote that way in Washington. But you have the radical left in this country. The Marxist mindset has taken over. Vote for Biden because he'll probably be able to bring us all together somehow. How will that be? When you say compromise, you have to get to a conclusion. Compromise on what? Compromise on, are we going to have a secure border or not? Democrats don't want a secure border, which is why they always abandon it when they have the chance. Democrats love to let people come in the country who have no legal right to be here because it's a purely evil calculation that someday those illegal aliens will become Democrat voters. So we capitulate, we find common ground. The Democrats are saying, okay, how about we only let 500,000 illegal aliens into this country every year instead of 1.5 million? You can't compromise with people who want to destroy America. You cannot compromise with people who do not want the America that is rooted in freedom, that promises freedom of speech, freedom of religion, peaceable assembly. You cannot negotiate with the left when what they want is the destruction of the idea of America. And this is why I say that was the most clueless, embarrassingly idiotic speech given I've ever heard at a convention. And this is an alleged Republican. This is a guy who never could find his political footing ever, never could find his way forward. And I gotta tell you folks, I do understand, and this is a distinction many candidates have to make, and I've heard our great Senator Ted Cruz make this point too. Of course, sometimes you compromise. You go to Congress, you're in the House or Senate, and there's a tax bill on the floor. And so you're debating a tax rate. Are we going to change the tax rate for this particular group of people or this corporate tax rate from X to Y? And so you negotiate. You get to some decision. You may have to negotiate with respect to immigration and what kind of provisions you're going to put in the new immigration laws. You can negotiate on legislative points. You can negotiate on the idea of what tax rates you're going to pay. You can't negotiate with people who are saying, as the Democrat Party of America today is saying, is, hi, we're here to destroy the sovereignty of the United States of America. We're here to open the borders. We're here to obliterate free markets. We're here to gather more and more power into Washington and have the regulatory state control this country. And people on the right, the conservatives, the Republicans, the Americans, are saying, wait a minute, we actually want American freedom. We want the freedom our country was founded on. So we're not negotiating with you because you're trying to take it away. We have an enemy within in this country in the form of the radical left that has now overtaken, completely controls the agenda of the Democrat Party. The agenda, the ideas of the Democrat Party have married, melded, and blended with the radical Marxist ideas pushed by the Communist Party of America in this country for decades. It is now, they find their home in the Communist Party in America today, finds their home in today's Democrat Party because they have won the battle of ideas within the Democrat Party. So Kasich talking about, hey, let's go ahead and get with Biden. He will be a compromiser. You know, we'll somehow find common ground with people who want to destroy the country. And this whole concept is saying he'll be thinking about all of us. He'll be the most childish, immature, socialist, utopian concept that somehow give more power, more tax money, more regulatory power to the government, and they'll make everything perfect. It's kind of what Chavez promised in Venezuela. It's what Castro promised in Cuba. It's what the Democrats are promising America today. We have to wake up and not buy into it. I could go on and on more about Kasich, but the idea, the whole premise of his remarks was plain lunacy. One more point on Kasich before I turn to Michelle Obama. And this actually applies to every speaker that I heard. I didn't hear every single speech, but I listened to a bunch of them. No one that I heard at least said anything to the effect that America is a country rooted in freedom, that we are not socialists, that we reject Marxism, we reject socialism. Not one person at the Democrat National Convention could find the backbone, the clarity to say, we're the Democrat Party. We're not socialists. We're not Marxists. That's not who we are. That was a point that Bernie Sanders was making, and he's absolutely right. His ideas have steamrolled whatever allegiance the Democrat Party had to the ideas of America. So you have the left has utterly capitulated to Marxism. The Democrat Party has capitulated to Marxism, and at the Democrat convention, you could not hear one person saying, "Oh, that's not who we are." No, Bernie Sanders, he's out there, he's a socialist. We're not that. They won't say it because they can't, because it's where their party lives. Nor could you find any of the people at the convention, at least that I heard, condemning Antifa, condemning the Marxist Black Lives Matter movement, condemning the destruction of buildings, the destruction of property, the burning of police cars, the murder, the mayhem in the streets of America. Could not hear that condemned. Ask yourself why. These people have got to get the votes of the most radical elements of American society, so they can't say word one condemning them. They can't do it. I could say a lot more, but I want to just make the contrast in wrapping up this segment. Understand, you had, on the one hand, Bernie Sanders saying, hey, all the great ideas I ran on, America's embracing these. Yeah, we're way down the path of socialism, way down the path of free everything from the government, way down the path of government-controlled healthcare, government-controlled economy. And don't worry, Biden's right with me. That was Bernie Sanders' message. Biden's right with me. Kasich is trying to paint the picture that Biden's a super guy. In fact, I don't think that was in the little clip I played, but Kasich said at one point, I don't really agree with everything. I'm not with Biden in every policy. But he's trying to sell Biden as some moderate, as some, don't worry, reasonable, fair-minded, steady guy. In fact, he said, I know some people are worried that Kasich said, people are worried Biden's going to go all socialist on us. Don't worry, he's not going to do that. No. Kasich is trying to paint the picture of Biden as a moderate, reasonable man of the people. Bernie Sanders is telling you, no. Biden is going to be a radical Marxist just like I am. So that's the question, folks. Which is it? Which is it? I'm telling you, Kasich has never been astute in understanding political ideology. He thinks that compromise is the whole point versus standing for principles. And then when you get to a decision, you have to compromise on, tax rates and individual things, but you stand with principles. He has none. He thinks compromise is a principle, but it's not. He thinks moderation is a principle, but it's not. He doesn't have principles, and so he cannot see the problem with supporting Biden, because after all, Biden seems like a nice guy. So, Bernie is selling us Biden as a socialist. Kasich is selling us Biden as a really reasonable, moderate, great guy. Can't be both ways. And the answer is Biden is going to be Bernie Sanders all over again. So that wraps up this segment on just those two, Bernie Sanders and John Kasich. I want to turn to Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama had a very, very heavy presence, a lengthy speech she made. I think it was 18 minutes. I have it broken in segments that I sent to Matt the Wonderful, and I do want to kind of break down a little bit where she was headed with some of her remarks. So I had the opening one, the very first thing she said. This is from the very beginning of her speech at the Democrat convention last night, the very first clip with Michelle Obama.
I am one of a handful of people living today who have seen firsthand the immense weight and awesome power of the presidency. And let me once again tell you this. The job is hard. It requires clear-headed judgment, a mastery of complex and competing issues, a devotion to facts and history, a moral compass, and an ability to listen, and an abiding belief that each of the 330 million lives in this country has meaning and worth.
Allow me to remind you, she's speaking of her ex-husband, who was president for 8 years, Barack Obama, 8 years, 2 terms of the presidency, and you know where we ended up after 8 years of his presidency. A weakened America, a weakened sense of love of America, an emboldened Iran, a massively growing government dependency class, massive growth of the bureaucratic state. When she talks about her husband being smart, and he is smart, I mean, she's smart too, talks about him being smart, she's talking about he's not a principled commitment to the freedom of America, not a principled commitment to the ideas that founded America, but instead she's talking about the idea that he can sit down with a bunch of data and figure out if he's the guru in charge of the country, he knows how to tweak this and fix this and grab this power and control this. And so she's talking about his human intellect in creating policies, regardless of the fact that what happened during his presidency was we moved this country radically to the left. We had the takeover of the healthcare system almost instantly after he took office. One of the first major things any socialist or communist leader in this world does is grab control of the healthcare system, because if the government controls the healthcare system, they control you. And every socialist and every Marxist knows this. So she's trying to paint this, you need to have a really bright guy, and my husband, isn't he really bright? You need to have a person who understands the idea of America. You need to have a person committed to the principles of the founding of America. You can get people who come to work for your administration who are experts in energy and healthcare and tax policy and all sorts of policies you need to understand. The president doesn't have to be the one that has the knowledge of all those policies. He has to know the principles he stands for, and he has to know whether or not he is rooted in the idea of America as an exceptional and free nation, and then you'll hire the experts who will put policies in place to hold on to that. But, of course, she's taking shots. She's subtly taking shots at President Trump. I will tell you one little thing. I didn't pick this segment up. One little thing she talked about in the course of her remarks. She did this several times. She took shots at President Trump over and over. She finally did it very directly, but she over and over and over. But she kept saying, "Oh, but I'm not into politics. I don't like politics. I'm taking the high road." That's what she tried to say about herself as she's taking shots. She's taking the high road by taking shots. But I want to go on to the next clip that she plays. This was that I sent to Matt the Wonderful. There's actually, it's the very next one down. It's 2 little clips put together. Matt the Wonderful.
Empathy. That's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. The ability to walk in someone else's shoes. The recognition that someone else's experience has value too. Most of us practice this without a second thought. If we see someone suffering or struggling, we don't stand in judgment, we reach out. Because there, but for the grace of God, go I. It is not a hard concept to grasp. It's what we teach our children. They see an entitlement that says only certain people belong here. That greed is good and winning is everything, because as long as you come out on top, it doesn't matter what happens to everyone else. And they see what happens when that lack of empathy is ginned up into outright disdain. They see our leaders labeling fellow citizens enemies of the state while emboldening torch-bearing white supremacists. They watch in horror as children are torn from their families and thrown into cages, and pepper spray and rubber bullets are used on peaceful protesters for a photo op.
You remember when there was when Senator Ted Kennedy was still alive in the Senate, and at one point he was on one of his many riffs attacking George W. Bush, and he used the expression on the floor of the Senate. Ted Kennedy said, "Lie after lie after lie after lie," talking about George W. Bush, who was not lying, by the way, was not. But Kennedy did this. In fact, I probably should have dug up that little clip and played, because you just heard from Michelle Obama. Lie after lie after lie after lie after lie. And I want to hit at some of these because it matters. Let me start, though, with her point about empathy. I have noticed, and this was a big takeaway from last night for some leftists, oh my gosh, I'm so happy Michelle Obama talked about empathy. She is touting left-wing policies that she knows what kind of policies that you'll have Joe Biden put in place. So she's trying to sell leftist ideas in the tone, the voice, the manner that she has that is very, very compelling. I started to say earlier, I want to say a couple things about her. She's very attractive. She has a very smooth and soothing voice. She has the ability, as she delivered her remarks, to convey emotion. A few times you hear it almost feels like she's breaking up, like her voice is breaking because she's so emotionally overwrought about what she's talking about. She is, as her husband is, a powerful orator. She's a powerful, try to connect with the people. I talk and you listen, you're drawn in and say, oh yeah, Michelle Obama, you're so great. She's selling tyranny. She is selling tyranny under the guise of wanting to ask Americans to embrace empathy. The policies she would push, the policies she supports, the policies her husband supported, the takeover of the healthcare system, the entire expansion of the federal government, destruction more and more of the private sector in America, the regulatory control in Washington that just crushed businesses. She's selling tyranny, selling socialism, selling Marxism under the guise of simply asking America to embrace empathy. Just because she has a smooth tongue and a sugary way of speaking and a compassionate way of speaking doesn't mean that what she's selling is right. She's selling evil ideas and she's very, very good at it. But on the lie after lie after lie after lie, number one, the Obama administration, she talked about children tossed in cages. That was under the Obama administration where they began to have the southern border overrun. And they weren't cages, but, and no one in the media or Hollywood or Congress said a word about it. When under the Obama administration, children who crossed the border and had to be separated from people because they weren't sure if they were their parents, were they being trafficked, were they victims of child trafficking? So they had to be contained. And so yes, they were put in things built by the Obama administration that were later on the Trump administration labeled as cages. This came from the Obama team. You have the argument that Trump was supporting torch-bearing white supremacists. President Trump has condemned over and over and over the whole idea of the Klan, which again, the Klan came out of the Democrat South. The Klan was actually originally an arm of the Democrat Party to enforce their Jim Crow laws, to enforce their segregation. That's what the Klan is. And all this white robe, torch-bearing people, these were leftists. Controlled by, and made up of Democrats. President Trump has not ever supported them, encouraged them. He has condemned them. He has said they have no place, and yet the left keeps up this lie. Michelle Obama is counting on you to be duped by her, counting on you to not know what the facts are, and because she can put out there saying this is what's happening, and it's all Trump, and people say, oh my gosh, who knew Trump supports KKK or torch-bearing people in white robes? He never has, and the people who did, even including up until very recently, members of the United States Senate who are Democrats, they're the ones who support the Klan. But this is when I tell you, Michelle Obama, smooth-tongued, emotion-evoking liar and a false accuser of the American people and a false accuser of this president. She also talked about the this whole concept of empathy, and I want to hit that one more time before I march on to some other things she had to say. Just because you say you listen, just because you say you teach your children empathy doesn't mean that the political values you are pushing are the product of empathy or will help anyone. Leftists, like Michelle Obama, sell Marxism, sell socialist control of the government, sell government control of the healthcare system, government expansion and more control of the economy by the argument, we're just trying to help. We see someone in need, so we reach out and help. We try to help them. We see someone in need, so we want to help them. Their help means massive growth of the bureaucratic state to control businesses, massive growth of the dependency state in this country, massive growth of people dependent on welfare and food stamps and every other new program the federal government thinks up. Because when people become dependent on the federal government, they become future Democrat voters. They become the people who wait for the next iteration of free things from the government. So she is selling lies, she is telling lies, and she's doing it in a most persuasive manner. I'll tell you very quickly, we have a good friend who's a very smart guy. He's a Democrat, and he stays out of politics on social media. But even he posted this link to Michelle Obama to say, I don't really like politics that much on social media. I don't do this, but listen to her, because this is what we're missing is empathy. It's always easier for left-wingers to sell their political ideas, because what they're trying to sell is, give us all the power, give us all the money, we'll make everything free, and they can make that sound empathetic. It's the same argument Castro made. It's the same argument Chavez made. Give me all the power, I'll take care of you, don't worry. We don't need the government, and we should not, in a country rooted in freedom, want to have the government be the entity that decides how much money we can have, what kind of health care we're entitled to have or not entitled to have, where we live, the whole litany of things the left is targeting doing to America if we only give them the right and the ability to do that. I have two more clips of Michelle Obama. Here we are, the next clip of Michelle Obama.
And I know that regardless of our race, age, religion, or politics, when we close out the noise and the fear and truly open our hearts, we know that what's going on in this country is just not right. This is not who we want to be.
Again, she's a little bit of her John Kasich moment there. I mean, the reason I'm doing this is because I think a lot of you listening probably already plan on voting for America, voting to preserve freedom in America, but you should be ready to respond to your friends, and you should be ready to talk about yourselves. People who watch the convention say, gee, Michelle Obama made some really, really good points about how this country is so toxic and it's so divided, and we don't want to be like this. Again, I go back to one of my points in the start of this show. Understand, the left has intentionally created the chaos and the division they are now reporting on, talking about, and blaming on Trump. There were millions of Americans during the Obama era who disagreed with hundreds of decisions of the Obama administration. Millions of Americans who did not agree with the direction Obama tried to take this country. We did not engage in the 24/7 hysterical meltdown attacks on Obama that the Democrat left has done to President Trump today. Michelle Obama is able to talk about division because the radical left has created and perpetuated and stirred up and fed the beast of that anger. She's reporting on the ugliness created by the leftists in this country and saying that's not who we are. No, it's actually not. But you know what? Just like Republicans who actually still want to have a sovereign America, a strong national defense, a free market economy, had to put up with 8 years of Barack Obama and 8 years of trying to convince people the wrongness of his policies. The left does not engage in that kind of discussion. They do not engage in the, here's why we're in favor of X and opposed to Y. They don't do that. They create hysterical outrage in the streets of our country through endless attacks on President Trump, attacks on his policies, attacks on everything he says and does. And then when they have created the anger, describe America as divided. And that's what Michelle Obama is talking about. This whole, she's very good at the visual. If we just close the door and open our hearts, we're all good people. We can all love each other. Don't worry. Just let Biden become president and everything will be fine. And we'll all love each other again because all the outrage will be gone. The outrage they created. And what will happen under Biden is what would have happened under a Bernie Sanders. The left has become Marxist. It's as simple as that. And you're either going to have America or you're going to have Marxism. One more clip by Michelle Obama, I believe we have.
Because Joe Biden has served this nation his entire life without ever losing sight of who he is. But more than that, he has never lost sight of who we are, all of us. Joe Biden wants all of our kids to go to a good school, see a doctor when they're sick, live on a healthy planet. And he's got plans to make all of that happen.
Okay, I got to tell you again, every person who spoke about Biden's character, every person at least that I heard, now maybe some things will come up in the rest of this convention, not one of them could mention one accomplishment of Joe Biden. He's been in the Senate since 1972, I think it is. Been in the Senate since 1972. No one can list one accomplishment in all that time. What they talk about, when they talk about him, it's again that Democrat emotional tactic. Many of them mention it. Kasich mentioned it. Michelle Obama mentioned it. You know, that Joe Biden has, and he has had terrible personal tragedy in his life. He has, and it's very sad. He lost his first wife and child in a car accident when he was a new senator. And in fact, I don't even know if he was yet in Washington, but very early on in his political career, he lost his first wife and a child in a car accident. And then while he was serving as vice president, one of his adult sons passed away from cancer. So he has had personal tragedy. And people talking at this convention were saying, you know, he knows what grief is like. He feels the pain of people. Kind of like when Bill Clinton ran, I feel your pain, I feel your pain. These are emotional arguments leftists make. And all of us know people who have lost family members. I've lost family members. I understand how hard it is. But the fact that you've been through personal grief, the fact that you've lost people you love, which is terrible, and everyone is deserving of sympathy and love from their friends, but the fact that you have had personal loss in your life does not constitute a qualification to be president. It doesn't constitute a qualification for any political job. It does not make you a better person. It does not make you a wiser person. It does not make you wise about policy, foreign policy, tax policy, any policy. The loss of life in your family is horrible. And I've been through very painful things in our family. I do understand this. But it doesn't make a person qualified. And when you listen to everybody who mentioned Joe Biden in this litany of Democrats yesterday at the convention, when they would talk about Biden, they'd talk about, he's really nice, he's really reasonable, he's a man of faith, and, and most of them went to he's been through grief, which is kind of what they're saying is, I can't think of any actual accomplishments. I can't think of any issue he led on. I can't think of any, initiative he started. I can't think of much of anything. Tomorrow on this show, we're going to talk a little more about Joe Biden and his unbelievable start, how he got started in politics. Simply astonishing how he actually got started in politics. And it was not because he was a brilliant leader. It's because he got funded by a radical leftist organization. Okay, but back to this. I want to say on the Democrat convention, there is just a world to be learned from what you've seen so far in the Democrat convention. My takeaways on all the above is they are not able to list an accomplishment of their candidate, Joe Biden. They are not able to condemn the Marxism that is feeding Antifa, that is Antifa, the Marxism that is Black Lives Matter. They cannot condemn it in the slightest. Our cities are burning. We're in day, whatever it is in Portland, 72 or something of riots and protests and destruction. They can't condemn any of that because that's their voting base. Understand, that's the Democrat Party's voting base. They can't condemn Marxism because they are Marxists. They can't condemn it at all. They are doing the same thing, but in spades more and in volumes more than when Bill Clinton ran, and he ran on, hey, I feel your pain, send me some money, I'll make policies. The whole I feel your pain thing, they're running on empathy, and they're running on trying to work you up into anger, and into anger at President Trump over policies that his supporters want. His supporters want the secure borders. His supporters want jobs coming back. They're trying to make you angry at Trump, and in part make you angry at Trump over policies that Barack Obama put in place, such as having to restrain children who cross the southern border. And it is unclear, they either come as unaccompanied children or they come with people. It's unclear if they are really their parents or family members, or are they actually child traffickers. And fortunately, under the Obama administration and Trump, we have to restrain those children until we figure out who they are. But if I had to, I can't even think of one word to describe, but one concept that just explodes on the page if you have to listen to these Democrats is they just have to lie to win. They have to lie to win. They're selling you tyranny. They're selling you government-controlled society, but they're selling it by saying, we're empathetic. We care. We care so much more than those mean Republicans. We care. Empathy is needed. Vote for us and we'll care. But what they mean by care is they will take complete control of the healthcare system. You will have no more healthcare freedom. They will return America to a expanded government society, government-funded dependency state, government-funded programs that keep people dependent. They will expand the regulatory, the bureaucratic state in Washington, D.C. They will make it bigger. They will make it a bigger and bigger thing, because that is one of the steps along the way to getting this country to socialism. Believe Bernie Sanders when he tells you Biden is going to do what Bernie Sanders would have done anyway, which is take America as far left as he can and as fast as he can if he were to win the presidency. And one more story for today. It was really eye-opening. I urge you to watch, I guess I urge you to watch those, or you can just take my word for it. But the last thing I want to talk about today is 2020 and the women's vote. So today, this very day, is the 100th anniversary of the actual implementation, the putting in place, the ratifying of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, giving women the right to vote. Today's the day, 100 years ago today, that the 19th Amendment actually became part of the Constitution and women had the right to vote. And I want to talk about a couple of things. First, just a lighthearted story, which is that President Trump has announced that he is going to, in honor of this and this big anniversary, 100th anniversary of the women getting the right to vote, he is going to issue a pardon for Susan B. Anthony, who was actually convicted of a crime by going to vote before women had the right to vote. Here's a quick clip by President Trump making this announcement.
I wanted to just add something because this was brought up a week ago, and I was so surprised that it was never done before. Because later today, I will be signing a full and complete pardon for Susan B. Anthony. She was never pardoned. Did you know that? She was never pardoned. What was going on? And you know that she got a pardon for a lot of other women, and she didn't put her name on the list.
So there you go. He's going to give, which is obviously symbolic. She's long gone. But the concept of celebrating women getting the right to vote and issuing a pardon for Susan B. Anthony, I kind of like that. But I want to make a deeper point in closing out on this show today and in talking about this anniversary of women getting the right to vote. I think that American women are the recipients of the most condescending and insulting treatment by leftists in this country in the political realm. Leftists in this country, to curry favor with women, to try to get women to vote for them, put out lies, and I'm sure you're going to start to hear them again this campaign season. Women only earn, 73 cents on the dollar compared to men. This has not been true for decades. But the left trots out this argument every campaign season because they know that some women will not bother researching, will not bother figuring out the facts and think, oh, that's terrible. Well, I'm voting for the Democrats because they're going to fix this. God, by golly, I can't believe we only get 73% on the dollar. It is not true and hasn't been true for decades. I've done numerous shows on it, run the data for you, showed the data. When you compare actual apples to apples, women in specific careers with specific education and tenure, they're whatever they are, a PhD in economics and done it for 10 years, with men in the same category, so you're apples to apples, there is no wage gap. In fact, in some very highly compensated fields of work, women, apples to apples compared to men, get paid more than men. So, but why? Ask yourself why the left trots this argument out year after year, even after it's pointed out, for example, in many of the Ivy League institutions, and other colleges and universities, there are more women than men in the graduating classes in law schools and other professional schools. We have access to great education. We have equal access to education, equal access to job. We have the ability to pursue our dreams. We have the ability to go work, and we have laws to protect us in case we bump into one of the sexes who are still around in this country. And there are sexists, of course there are. And we have legal paths available if you want to sue them. We have that. Great, and we should have that. But the left trots out that argument because how the left talks to women is always from the perspective to say, don't you realize you're a victim? You belong in one of our victim silos. We, the leftists, we have victim silos for every hyphenated group in America. And women, you should join in too. You should be part of the victim silo. Here's your reason you're a victim. Leftists try to cultivate a whole bunch of disconnected silos of Americans, all believing in their lies about victimhood. And that is cobbled together. These silos constitute what the Democrats hope will be a majority voting base. The second reason I tell you that it's insulting how Democrats treat women in election cycles, how leftists talk to women, is because you have the argument made so often that women support, and in some way or other with respect to the abortion issue, left tries to say, because we are, Democrats and we are pro-abortion, we're pro-legal abortion, we should get the women's vote. And it's insulting because it is talking to women as though because you're a woman, you must hold this view on the abortion issue. Not true. There are millions of women who strive every day to support the pro-life movement, to help the pro-life movement, to help pro-life organizations. It's insulting to assign to women the assumption of their political view about abortion just because they happen to be women. There are plenty of women who are pro-choice or pro-abortion, and plenty of women who are pro-life and want to see abortion diminished and ultimately ended. But your gender doesn't dictate your viewpoint, except the left tries to tell you it does. It's the same way the left talks to many African Americans. The argument of the left is that because you're African American, you must be a radical leftist. You must be in favor of reparations. You must be in favor of affirmative action. You must be in favor of every single policy radical leftists support, and they are insulting toward Black Americans who don't agree with them. It's the same mentality of not treating people as though they're individuals worthy of being respected as individuals and thinking as individuals. The last thing about women and the 2020 election cycle is this. As you saw with Michelle Obama and her empathy spiel, as you will see, I'm sure, throughout this convention and throughout the election season, you're going to hear leftists making emotional arguments, making empathy arguments, and pushing policies that actually never work and never help people. But the leftists are never forced to. They're really rarely held accountable for. They rarely are questioned about what is it exactly you're going to do. I mean, President Trump is saying secure the border. What's your position? Don't secure the border? Or let as many illegal aliens in as want to come? Or what is your position on that? What is your position on trade? Do you want to have America have fair trade agreements that allow us to build up our infrastructure again, to build up our country, to make America prosperous again, make America have jobs available here? If you're against that, what's your position? The left uses emotional arguments. They use labeling. They trot out the hate, hatred, bigoted, xenophobe, homophobe, Islamophobe, misogynist. They quote, they drag out of their election locker the same items every 4 years and say, oh yeah, okay, this election cycle again, we're going to call them hateful, bigoted, ignorant, xenophobe, homophobe. And so they trot out labels, they spew them out to the American public, and they expect you to go along with them and vote for them when they are not going to lay out for you what it is they would do instead. What are the policies they support instead? Especially big in the leftist lexicon this election cycle is hater and hatred. It is what they ascribe to every single person who dares to disagree with them on any issue facing this country. It's always, oh, well, then you're a hater. You don't believe in X, you're a hater. And so I really urge you, as we go forward watching the rest of this week, the Democrat convention, watching how many times they actually make arguments of substance on policies versus argue empathy, throw out an emotional appeal, or trot someone across the stage and say, see this person, this happened to them, and it's all because Republicans' fault, instead of talking about what policies they stand for. Watch how often they talk about women as victims. That the entire purpose of existence for women in America is to sign up for their victim club of the year, club of the week. That's what their entire purpose is. Watch that versus how much you actually hear from them about what they believe in. Because I think the radical left in this country has overtaken the Democrat Party. The Democrats cannot stand on the American playing field. They cannot advocate for the freedoms our Constitution guarantees. They cannot advocate for the First Amendment rights. They cannot advocate for entrepreneurship and free enterprise. They cannot advocate for it because too much of their base is way down the tank in the pit of socialism and Marxism, so that's what they have to sell to the American people. I could talk about this more, but I'm going to wrap it up for today. I have one last really big thing to tell you before we get to why it matters to you, and that is this. I think the 2020 elections, as I have been saying for quite a while now, are extremely important. In 2020, we're choosing either a path to keep America on the path of freedom, free markets, strength, exceptionalism, and a government concept that protects American sovereignty and goodness and protects the people, or we have the path of Marxism and government-controlled society, loss of freedom, of every conceivable kind of freedom. And because I see on the horizon from what the left is doing that we are going to end up in this country facing a battle over freedom in 2020, I am hosting a conference here in Dallas on September 26th called American Women and American Freedom. American Women and American Freedom. I have almost all women speakers, but a few men, a few great men, and I have great women speakers. And there are essentially about 300 tickets. That's how many people can come to this conference. I am telling you, and everyone speaking is going to be on the topic of how freedom is starkly on the ballot in 2020. If you're interested in coming to Dallas for this conference on September 26th, you can email me at americacanwetalk@gmail.com. It's going to be stellar. It's going to be directly targeted at the 2020 elections and the idea that we are going to stand up and insist women want freedom. Women value freedom. We are not the hapless and helpless and weak people that leftists try to paint us to be. American women are strong. We do not need government programs. We don't need government sympathy. We don't need government treating us though we are as though we are helpless in today's American society. We American women want freedom. We want to stand up for it. That's what the conference is about. I hope you'll email me if you're interested at americacanwetalk@gmail.com. One last thing before I get to why it matters. So I'm doing the show tomorrow Wednesday, and then we're actually going out of town, so I will not be doing a show Thursday this week. I'm going to a very fun conference in Washington. I'm going to learn a lot there. I'm going to do a little tiny speaking piece, but mainly I'm going to just to kind of join with a small group of similarly minded Americans to get ready for, to prepare for, to talk about being ready to hold on to this country in 2020. So I'm skipping the show Thursday. I'll see you tomorrow, and then I'll see you next Monday. And now I want to turn to telling you why the stories we talked about today matter to you. So to start with today, we talk about the Democrat Convention reality check. For 4 years under President Obama, under President Trump, 4 years under President Trump, jobs returning, pre-COVID unemployment rates at record lows. We had a booming economy pre-COVID, stock market, 401ks, everyone was doing better. We had energy independence. We have massively reduced federal regulation. We have Israel respected. The U.S. Embassy moved. The Israel-UAE historic peace deal, which we'll talk about tomorrow, was put in place, an enormous step for America. Contrast that with 8 years under Obama, massively increased regulations and hollowed out manufacturing sector. Jobs are not coming back, said Obama. Gutted the healthcare system with socialized medicine, weaponized the IRS, FBI, and DOJ against the American people. The Iranian deal was a sellout to the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. Israel was alienated. The Paris Climate Accord, shackles for the U.S., free pass for everyone else. The reality, President Trump has a massive enthusiasm advantage over Biden. The Democrat convention will not close that gap. And on Bernie Sanders versus John Kasich, we had Bernie Sanders. He's a militant leftist who thinks his ideas are winning. Free healthcare, free school, free college, free housing. You heard the other litany, free everything. Life should be free of challenges because government. That's his basic argument. John Kasich believes the radical left and the American patriots just need a decent man like Biden to be president and unify everyone. Kasich is cringe-level clueless. Where is the common ground between those who love America and those who want to destroy America? Kasich is a classic old-school Republican, no idea what the left of today is really about. Americans want a fighter for America. And on Michelle Obama and her empathy argument, Michelle Obama would have been more formidable than Kamala Harris as vice president. She is smooth talking, but deceptive and misleading words. Look at policies, not promises. She's attacking Trump for lack of empathy. Michelle Obama speaking nicely means nothing if leftist policies hurt people. Migrant children in cages, that was the Obama administration who started that. The Obama-Iran deal gave $150 billion to the Death to America malocracy, endangering the world. Riots across America, innocent citizens beaten, all in Democrat-run cities. Democrats supported Antifa and BLM, clearly Marxist and violent. Where is the empathy for their victims? Praising Biden's decency is not an affirmation of Biden's competency. Actually, I didn't even mention this earlier, but Barack Obama said about Joe Biden, his leaked put-down, don't underestimate Joe's ability to F things up. Democrat determination to continue with Biden despite his dementia is cruel and a statement of their disdain for the American voter. They just want someone in who will do their leftist policies. Biden is irrelevant to them. And finally, 2020 and the women's vote. Trump overcame a sizable gender gap in 2016. Will that change in 2020? He's not running against Hillary. He has a Me Too creepy touchy problem. But will women accept group identity and victimhood? The centennial of the 19th Amendment is giving women the right to vote. It's a test for us in 2020. Do women really equate big government socialism with compassion? Do women see the freedom-destroying, country-changing threat of radical leftism? Women must rise up and demand policies that work and preserve America's founding freedom, and reject smooth-talking, utopian, impossible promises. And that's why America Can We Talk is organizing the first annual American Women and American Freedom Conference in Dallas, September 26th. Email me at americacanwetalk@gmail.com for more information. And that, my very fine friends, is America Can We Talk for today. Please tune in every Monday through Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Time for America Can We Talk, where I always talk truth about America because America matters. And I will talk to you next time.
America Can We Talk? Truth about America.